He ever went full-time with this stuff. I think he was always kind of mainly college. Anyway, yeah.
Cool.
This area here is under.
It's probably Mark making noises.
Maybe Dad if ever I was on. If I was ever on Boma, because my first grade teacher used to know me all the times I was terrible about rocking chairs. I'm awful. I'd have to like nail myself down.
Yep.
All right, Mr. Shipley, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Gentlemen?
Yep, ready.
All right. I'd like to call to order the Farragut Board of Zoning Appeals for April 27, 2022. I'm Keith Alley. I serve as the chair. Good evening. We have two items on the agenda this evening. The first item is the approval of the minutes for the March 23, 2022 meeting. And have you gentlemen had an opportunity to look through those?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Okay. I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, a call for the vote. All in favor, please affirm by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Second item on the agenda is a public hearing on a request for a special exception for an expansion to a non-conforming building for the Light of the World Baptist Church at 12,430 Union Road, zoned R1. And the Light of the World Baptist Church is the applicant, and we have someone from the applicant here this evening. Yes, good evening. And Mr. Shipley, I guess what I can do is I will start by swearing everyone in.
Okay.
So if everyone who's planning on giving testimony in this matter will please raise their right hand and swear or affirm that the information you're about to present this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. All right, sounds good. Mr. Shipley, customarily, gentlemen, what we do is we have the town's representative present the information, and then you are certainly welcome to ask the town's representative some questions. We might do that. And then anytime you present information, we just ask that you take the podium. We'll ask you to introduce yourself, tell us where you live, and then we'll let you tell us what you want to tell us. Okay, Mr. Shipley.
This property is on the east side of, east section of Union Road. There's actually two sections. They're bisected by Everett Road. But this is a section that connects Everett to Smith Road. They basically, this is a review of a special exception to expand a non-conforming building. The expansion is roughly 1,200 square feet, and the existing building is roughly 6,000 square feet, and it was built well before 1900. The building abuts a cemetery to the south, kind of in this area. If you can see that arrow, the cemetery is to the south, and that's owned by Union Cumberland Presbyterian Church. There's kind of a drainage area to the north and some estate lots. And then you have part of the Fox Den subdivision is to the east and the south of this property. The building sits well over 200 feet from Union Road. You can kind of see it with this layout here. Down here is Union Road. And the existing building is here. The proposed expansion is in this area. The building does not meet the current setbacks for churches or schools that apply to the R1 zoning district, because this property is actually zoned residential. The setback normally is 50 feet from the side and the rear property line. The existing church is actually, at its closest point, it's about 17, a little over 17 feet back in this area. Again, abutting the cemetery to the south. The proposed addition would be in this general area, and it would put the building closer to the cemetery's property line, roughly 6.67 feet. The church, this building is, as far as the staff is aware, it's always been used as a church. The applicant is a church. It's obviously a very small building. I'll show you some pictures of it if you haven't had a chance to get by there. Obviously, the church is straight ahead and the cemetery is to the right. This is kind of the general area where the expansion would generally occur, kind of on that south side of the building. This is looking at the church from Union Road. You can see that it's set back pretty far. And the north side of the church, it starts to drop down topographically from south to north as you go down toward this drainage area. And that's one of the reasons, well, really the main reason why their expansion is proposed in the area that it is, because of the topography, really. This is looking at Union Road from kind of the church area, so it's a pretty good distance. There's 2 access points to Union Road for this property, and it has kind of a large open area in between. The expansion that they're requesting is really designed to provide for ADA compliant restrooms. They currently are not ADA compliant because they're in the basement. And they also would be providing a greeting area, kind of a formalized entrance area. Right now, if you enter the church, you are right in the sanctuary as soon as you enter the building. So they're trying to create an area of separation there. And then the basement area would have some storage associated with it. The site will also be updated with this project if it's approved. There's really not any formalized parking out there, and I was kind of surprised by that one because I really hadn't been on the property since I've been here, really. So one of the things that they went to the Planning Commission last Thursday for site plan approval related to the building and the adding some parking. They're proposing to add 21 parking spaces for this particular project. As I mentioned earlier, the main reason this is here is because it's a non-conforming building, doesn't meet setbacks, doesn't really meet probably any requirements, building, fire code. So the request to enlarge it has to come through the Board of Zoning Appeals. The language in the ordinance that provides the board with direction is in the non-conforming buildings and uses section of Chapter 4. And that language says that non-conforming buildings and structures may be permitted to expand provided that the board determines there is reasonable space for their expansion, and the expansion does not compound the condition of being non-conforming. This actually does compound the condition of being non-conforming because it will move the building closer to the property line. However, from the staff's perspective at least, we do give consideration to the context. The expansion is toward a cemetery, and the existing land use there is not likely to change. There's not any residents that would be affected or impacted by expanding in this direction. And it's really, the reason for it is, as I mentioned earlier, really topography, and trying to have an easier way to do the construction that blends in better with the existing grade. So as far as having enough land area, the property is 1.06 acres. It's mostly open, as you saw in those pictures, not just the middle part, but also to the north as you get closer to that drainage area. That's all green space, and then all this area back here. So they really, even with this addition, would only be covering about 11% of the lot with a roof structure. They could go up to 35% for this type of use in R1. The total coverage would be around 40% with their parking and the addition. They can go up to 60% in this zoning district potentially. So I think there's enough physical space. The question is whether the board is comfortable with the unique context of the addition, the neighbor next door, so to speak. And if you would be willing to take that into consideration. The staff is comfortable with considering the context here and the building's configuration and its age and the topography of the site. So we are comfortable with recommending approval of the special exception. I think if there were a house to the south that it was expanding toward, or some other entity that there could be potentially an impact, then we would, have a very different opinion of that expansion. But we would support this as they're requesting.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shipley. Do any board members have any questions for Mr. Shipley?
Excuse me, I do. Mr. Shipley, first question, have we had any comments from the folks who own the cemetery or from any of the residents that are in the vicinity?
I haven't personally received any comments. I'm not sure if the applicant has had any discussion with anyone. I did talk with the person that owns the state lot here to the north and on another matter, and I mentioned that to her, and she didn't have any problem with it. But that's just one person, and that was not even the original topic of our discussion.
Another question, do we know anything about the history of that cemetery, when it was built, when it was first utilized as a burial area?
Well, I don't know for sure the answer to that question, but I think it's pre-Civil War. I mean,
Okay.
it's old.
Yeah, I did a little bit of Google searching today, just trying to learn a little bit more about it, because I always try to think of what are some of the unintended surprises we could run into.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew it was pre-1900, but I didn't know how old. And it said that there was like 35 unidentified graves. But that one of the things I thought about, well, what happens if we start digging for this thing and we find a gravesite? What happens then?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, that property line, to my knowledge, has been there for a long time. I'm not sure why it's configured like that. My guess is that, and this is just a guess, is that the cemetery and this church were all on the same piece of property at one time.
Yeah, that was
And then
my
the cemetery,
speculation.
and then the church built a new facility over on Smith in Union and basically subdivided off property that they were able to sell to somebody else. So that's, my take on it is they, hopefully, when they did that subdivision alignment, that they had some general idea of where those, burials would be, so that, because they wouldn't really have any control over the property once they did subdivide it and sell it to someone else. But again, that's just an opinion. It doesn't
Right.
really mean anything. It's a good question.
And my last question, to what extent does this, if we approve this, in essence, variance, to what extent does it establish a precedent that might bind us later on other matters?
Well, from my perspective, and I look at that with anytime you all make a decision on most matters, that's why I mentioned, I think here you've got a unique context with the cemetery next door. That's a pretty rare occurrence for a property to have a cemetery next to it.
Yeah.
So I think we could certainly differentiate this from most other situations that may come before us in that
Okay.
regard, so.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with that. I personally would prefer that the addition would not get as close as what they're proposing and maybe be in line with the existing building on this line here, just come straight out. But, you know, that's something that, it's still going to be well within the
Yeah.
50 feet, and it's still going to be closer than the 17.4 feet of the existing corner of the church to the cemetery property.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Shipley, is there a reason that the addition can't move to the northwest towards the utility pole? You'd mentioned bringing it in line with the south, like a southeasterly
On that
line of the
plane.
building, yeah. But is there some reason? Because looking at the pictures, if you'll go back to the pictures, looks like there's a utility pole to the left. Not that picture, but another picture that shows me there you go.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you've got a utility pole there, and it's marked on the survey. So, you know, I understand that the closer you get to a utility pole, there might be some requirement to move the pole or something else. But that particular area looks as flat and high and everything else as the area that they're proposing to build it at the front of the church. So is there a particular reason why that you're aware of it couldn't be moved up?
Are you talking about moving the addition in this area?
That is correct. Moving it, yeah,
over
moving
here.
it from the right to the left.
To the left.
I mean, it does drop off. It's maybe hard to see in this picture, but it starts right in here, and you can see it's kind of starts tapering. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, this is kind of a drainage area.
Sure.
So there's a topographic difference. I wouldn't say it's an extreme difference, but there's definitely a change in topography there. This kind of gives you a little bit better sense of it. It's almost kind of a
But I mean, to get the
building into
amount
the
of
slope.
amount of building that you were talking about moving up, it'd almost be in line with the sidewalk that's shown there going to the covered area. So the sidewalk there on
Yeah.
the right, if you moved the addition up to there, I mean, maybe where it's positioned is where that sidewalk hits now. And so we'll ask the applicant. I can't tell where the sidewalk is necessarily on the, on the proposed building plan. But maybe that's
That
the
was my
sidewalk.
initial thought on this was why couldn't you have the expansion over here? It's still going to be within the 50 feet, even on that side, but that was the reason, was it just sit better with the existing building's configuration, and it was just an easier construction.
The distance between the border fence line that demarks the start of the cemetery land and where the proposed addition would be, is that 6.67 feet distance from the corner? So I mean, if you wanted to get a fire truck back there because the back of the building's on fire or something, I mean, that's not
Well, they
wide
can
enough.
reach it from the front just because of the size of the
Okay.
distance.
Okay.
Now, Jeff could probably comment more on that than I
Okay.
could. But I talked with Dan, our fire marshal, about that. 'Cause
Okay, so that's not a,
that's not an issue, no.
okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the largest issue is this is a high hazard building, not to code, extremely old. So building an addition onto it puts life safety, more people in the building, more people at risk. It's mitigated somewhat by the addition of the fire hydrant, which I like, and I think there's enough of space in the front. Now, we'd have to think about if you actually move it, but to make the loop, so fire trucks to come in and make the loop.
Yeah.
Dan and I talk about a lot of these, but this one I had not seen until you emailed it to us. I think there's still enough space to kind of, again, if you come in here to loop around, because it'd be nice to be able to do that still. I think there's enough room. However, again, putting a hydrant there is great.
Yeah, there's a hydrant proposed generally in this area along Union Road. That's part of a fire code requirement for this addition.
Okay, does anyone have any more questions for Mr. Shipley? Otherwise, we'll hear from the applicant.
Some of these questions we could actually further discuss with the applicant after we
Absolutely.
speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so at this point, if you would like to tell us about this, if you will take the podium, tell us your name and your address, where you live, and then just tell us your relationship to this project and what you'd like us to know.
My name is Greg Lutsenko, and I live in Knoxville here, 733 Settlers Pond Way. I represent our church board, a very excited small congregation that was raring to go on this renovation. It's taken quite a long time to get through this point, and everybody's excited to get back into our own building. We're actually in a different building now, and everybody is asking every Sunday, well, how are we doing? How are we doing? But in any case, this has been a dream for this congregation, obviously, to have our own building. So it was a really exciting purchase that was made several years ago. And so as we've planned this, the plans have changed a little bit. But if I can comment on the offset of the closest to the fence, what happened was when we were doing pardon me, the planning, we wanted to get a ramp into the sanctuary area for ADA compliance. And what happens is if we did a straight shot ramp along the side of the building that would make it flat, we actually have to go down to the basement with a ramp and up to the top. So when we offset the building, we had a little bit of a refuge area where we could make a flat area and we could split either to go down or up. So it really works well with the actual way the ramp works in that area. That's primarily the reason why that was done. It wasn't necessarily trying to get closer to the border or anything. The other part of it is as as Jeff mentioned, that the loop gets pretty tight there, and we're just concerned that would like to maximize the amount of area for vehicles to come in, and because there's going to be so many people coming, presumably people coming out of the front of the building, just having a little bit of extra room there it seemed to work well with the way everything was planned there. So I can't remember the unfortunately the cemetery questions. I have no idea whether or not that has any bearing. I'm not sure. I can't comment to that.
Well, hopefully there are not people buried under the asphalt.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's right. We would hope. Yeah, I don't have any more comments, but if you have any other questions, I'm happy to try to answer. Yeah.
What's the, excuse me, what's the width of the circle, so to speak, or the curvature from the edge of the building to the edge of the concrete?
So I don't have an exact, the site survey will probably have a better, and when we had originally met during sort of the feasibility, the fire marshal was there as well, and he told us, I believe it was an
It's
18-inch
18
radius is what he'd like for the fire truck.
Yeah,
And the
it's 18.
street, the actual asphalt right now, in some areas it's 15, in some areas it's sort of weathered down, so we're gonna try and make it so that it's a good 18 feet for the fire truck to come through there, yeah.
Yeah, because it's just a one-way through there, obviously. And so Dan said it just had to be at least 18 through the whole circle.
And that's what the site plan shows, is an 18 foot at that point of the radius, so.
Oh, okay. There you go. I didn't see that. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant? All right, does the applicant have any other testimony from anyone else? You brought someone with you. We just want to make sure everyone's heard.
No, we just, safety in numbers.
We're not that frightened.
No, it's all good.
All right. If no one has any questions, do we have any discussion? Is there any more questions now that the applicant has provided the information of Mr. Shipley, or anything that we generally want to discuss? I mean, I'll start. For me, my biggest concern is what Mr. Shipley said, which is, generally speaking, with a non-conforming use, we don't want to exacerbate its non-conforming condition. This is unlike anything I've ever seen, in that we have an incredibly old cemetery that seems incredibly unlikely to change its nature, and given the other things that are being added that sort of benefit the non-conforming manner of this building, whether you look at the parking spaces, whether you look at the improved infrastructure, some other benefits the property is getting and may be getting from it, it's really hard to say that just because we're moving it closer to a fence line in a cemetery, if that's what we chose to do, that's really exacerbating the non-conforming condition when you're balancing out what's being improved from what's being exacerbated. So the 6.67 feet from the fence line to the corner of the proposed addition is the only thing that gives me any pause. But I'm somewhat compelled, somewhat impressed by the argument of the town that, well, you know, it really doesn't look like the cemetery's going to mind and that we're going to need it.
Quiet neighbors, yeah.
I do have.
Go ahead.
a question,
Yeah,
Mr.
absolutely.
Chairman. Is the cemetery actually on church property, or is it deeded separately to someone else?
It's separate, so we don't own any part of the cemetery, as far as I know.
Is that
Yeah.
the Presbyterian church?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Union Cumberland Presbyterian has actually owned that since the late 1800s, I think. That's the best I could
So
find.
they moved and they left their dead behind.
What is their position on this, or have you?
We haven't had any
contacted them?
contact with them whatsoever in terms of the expansion. The encroachment was something that we approached the board with to wonder what the procedure would be for that, yeah. Oh, they have a separate entrance, so we don't encumber any of their access to the actual cemetery. There's, right now in that area beside the church, there's a playground for kids. And it actually works really well that we can fence it off and we have an actual secluded playground for the kids. So the 6 feet is presumably where we would like to put a gate of some sort anyway for the kids so that if there's, you know, kids don't come running out into the parking lot. Yeah. So it works well for what we intend to use it for, but that's not really part of the answer to your question, I guess, yeah.
In the picture you have up now, Mr. Shipley, the slope is more apparent. I mean, it's a little difficult to tell if the camera's lopsided or what's going on, but there does appear to be a slope as you reach that front door, and it really does seem to start to taper downhill.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, it goes down there pretty sharply.
Yeah. So from a topographical perspective, I can certainly see the rationale for building it where it's proposed. And again, while getting an ADA compliant ramp versus being a little closer to a cemetery, I mean, that's,
I agree.
Be good if you could relocate that dogwood tree. That's a pretty one.
it is pretty.
I don't know if I don't know how big it is. Probably.
The dogwood tree goes, if I understand it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Front steps go in the entrance to the sanctuary, or how does that work?
So what we've had several different renditions. I have an actual photo that he can show. We've got several copies of it. What we want to do is we want to keep the stairs sort of centrally located in the front of the building, so that the facade gives a little bit of decoration from the street. We get a little bit of street appeal. So the stairs will actually be sort of indented in the actual foyer, so you'll be able to access them. But this way, the stairs don't extend out into the parking lot. We've tried to sort of minimize the amount we encroach on that loop. So that's the idea there. And we want to maintain the same red brick that's there. And then just for the entrance, I would like to make it a white brick, so that just gives a little bit of an accent.
Sure.
Are the blue doors shown in this photograph the same blue doors that go to the church now?
No,
Okay.
no.
I didn't know if the entranceway would be with a door I can't see off to the immediate right before you got to it. Are you going to keep those old doors there?
Well,
Move them out?
we haven't, truthfully, we've taken the bell down that used to be up top, and we want to put it in the entrance as a testament to, I mean, it's an old building. Those doors are pretty, I mean, we'll see. We need some sort of fire type of doors to the sanctuary probably, so I'm not sure if those will be rated the same way, but would like to use them somewhere, or use some of the things somewhere just to commemorate some of the history of the building. Yeah.
50s, 60s, maybe.
Yeah, it's built like, yeah, it's pretty solid built. I mean, it's, yeah. The greatest reason why we were hoping to just remodel whatever is inside and start using it. But the problem is we have no bathrooms on the upper floor, and getting down to the bottom is we have to go around if there's any rain or anything like that. So we figured we'd start there. If we can't get an approval for the foyer, then we'll have to regroup and see what else we can do. But right now, literally, you walk through those doors and you're right in the front and center, right in the congregation there. Yeah.
Will there be a rear entrance? Does this little walkway and you go left, will there be a?
So in the blueprints, yes, there's a side entrance right by the actual stage. There will be a side entrance, and there will be a basement entrance on that same right side where the ramp is. So that will be the access from the side. Yeah, I'm not sure if that. Yeah. And then on the left side, if you're facing the building, where that lower section is, there's an access door to the basement there as well, which works. We have a little bit of exits in all directions in case something was to happen. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
This illustration would suggest you're going to do some renovations and so forth to the existing building as well.
This is rendering just to show sort of it's really hard to see in the picture, so what we did is we basically that's not actually part of the architectural drawings, it's just for visual. But some of the brick on there is a little bit worn, so likely it will get, some of the windows might need to get changed. It's an older building, so we'll have to,
Yeah, anytime you open up an older building, you start finding surprises.
Absolutely, yeah.
These churches are like houses, you do.
Yeah.
All right, does anyone have any further questions of the applicant or the town's representative? If not, you are welcome to have a seat at this time.
Thank you.
And the chair will entertain any motions.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the proposal to grant a special exception to expand the non-conforming building to additionally encroach toward the cemetery. But I believe that for the reasons that have been addressed, it's appropriate. So I move that we approve the plan as given to us.
All right, and if I understand those reasons, it has to do with the topography of the property as it slopes severely on the western side and the northwestern side, in addition to the fact that although it does exacerbate a non-conforming condition, to some extent, it's our opinion that it offsets that by the addition of other things that do bring it into a little bit more compliance with our existing codes.
Right, and an upgrade to safety by adding the fire hydrant and presumably other modern safety features in the building itself.
Mr. Shipley, well, we can have a second and then we can discuss. Do I have a second?
I will second.
All right. With discussion, with regard to the site plan that we've been provided, I don't want to hem them into anything that is not necessary, but I like the fact that they actually have parking spaces now on the site plan.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that there's going to be 18 feet between the corner of the addition and the outermost curve at the point so that we can accommodate fire trucks. Is there, by approving this, are they locked into this site plan, or can they go and change the site plan? We can obviously make it contingent on the site plan remaining the
Well, the
same.
site plan itself went to the planning commission last week, and they conditionally approved it. One of the conditions, of course, was that the special exception would have to be approved
Sure.
for the expansion. So they could always propose to change the site plan or amend it if they wanted to at some point in the future and
But-
take it through the planning commission, but it's been approved provided they address the conditions of approval.
Can we make our decision contingent upon the site plan remaining as it is, or they come back to the board? Or do we lack that authority because that is the planning commission determines it? I mean, I guess we can, if it's non-conforming and basically the whole picture is what we're saying is what we think is why they should be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if they do the addition, they'll have to do the parking. That'll be a requirement of the town.
Okay. All right, so we really don't need to add anything.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we wouldn't be able to approve the addition if they didn't do the parking, because it's all related to each other. Yep.
Okay. All right, well, with that, I certainly feel comfortable. I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, call for a vote. All in favor of approving the motion, please affirm by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You're certainly welcome. Have a great evening. You are excused. Good
luck, guys.
Absolutely.
Congratulations.
When do you think you'll get started?
As soon as everybody hears about it.
It sounds like you had the money in hand, which is a great place to
Well,
be.
it's part of it. I think it's gonna be more expensive than we anticipate, just because everything has gone up.
That's right. That's right.
We have a lot of very, very willing and very, very excited congregants that were willing to come and help. So,
That's great.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
We'll invite you over when it's done to come.
Yes.
All right,
Great.
love to see it.
Thanks.
Take care.
Take care.
All right, thanks.
I took a lot of pictures when I was down there,
Yeah.
and now I can't.
Oh.
Well, my phone camera is so full of other pictures that
Take
somebody
capacity.
got crowded off.
I have 1 terabyte of space on my phone.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Which I thought the day that you got to where you can have a terabyte of space is
Yeah, I've still got a